Hi everyone, Felix here. Would you like to join us here at Camp Myth? Show us how you're enjoying the story so far, and our favourite entry will entitle the winner to join Moxie, Argy and me, Felix, in a future Camp Myth story. Any type of entry is fine. Drawings, stories, poems, photographs. How about a video of you singing Centaur Races? Submit them by December the 31st of this year, 2013, to campmyth@castofwonders.org. Hope to see you.
This is Cast of Wonders, the young adult fiction podcast featuring stories of the fantastic. Welcome to Camp Myth. Chapter 9, November 20th, 2013. Welcome back, campers. Are you ready for Chapter 9? Last week, Felix met Loam the Golem and took a tour of Camp Myth. Tonight's a big night for the campers, so let's not waste any time. Let's get started. Now, where were we? Yes.
Camp Myth, Phoenix Watching, by Chris Lewis Carter. Chapter 9. My bunk was located on the far side of Cabin 9, complete with a small wooden nightstand where I could store the rest of my things. My suitcase had arrived too, which the transit gnomes must have delivered while we were taking a tour. It all seemed nice enough, though my neighbours weren't exactly winners. The Fey bunking on my left began obsessively cleaning his living space from the moment he arrived and kept muttering about germs and proper organisation. The Fey on my right, he took one look at his uniform and launched into a total meltdown. Apparently it just hit him that camp meant being away from home for the entire summer, and the realisation caused him to fling himself on the bed and burst into tears. On top of my bunk, folded in a neat square beside a tag with my name on it, was a pair of long brown shorts and a white t-shirt with dark blue sleeves. The Camp Myth logo was emblazoned across the chest. Underneath the uniform was a thick paperback with the words Mythic Youth Training Handbook printed on the front in gold lettering, and a wooden box about the size of 3 stacked packs of playing cards. I flipped open the box and removed a shiny red pocket knife that had Myth Army etched on the side. There were about 1 million different attachments. I recognised some of the more obvious ones, like a serrated blade and a pair of scissors, but there were a bunch that I couldn't figure out at all, like a whistle that made a high-pitched sound and a tiny red lens that looked sort of like a magnifying glass. I quickly changed into my uniform, packed all of my other belongings inside the nightstand, and stuffed the knife and book into my pockets. After that, I left the cabin to find out what had happened to Argy and Moxie. Outside, it was still warm without being humid, and there was just enough of a gentle breeze to create the ideal temperature. If this was what we could expect for the entire summer, I was totally on board. It wasn't long until I discovered that the male Cyclops cabin was number 21, but Argy was nowhere to be found. I even worked up the nerve to peek through a few of the back windows, but all I could see were dozens of Cyclopes wrestling and trashing each other's bunks. I wondered if they would be punished for such behaviour, or if it would simply be chalked up to their nature and overlooked. As for Moxie, I wasn't surprised that no one from the female Kitsune cabin, number 32, knew who she was, but that meant she was either still meeting with Lil and Tessa, which was probably bad, or already sent home for sneaking onto the campgrounds, which was definitely worse. Out of luck, I decided it was time to head over to the welcome banquet. A mouth-watering scent wafted through the air as I approached. I recognised the smell and my stomach growled in anticipation. Were they actually cooking human food here? Was it possible that I could spend an entire summer away from tasteless grove meals like stewed lichen or wheatgrass casserole? The setup around the Peridexian tree was pretty impressive. A large stage was constructed around the base, and dozens of bright red picnic tables were arranged in evenly spaced rows. Most of them were already packed with campers, all of them wearing their Camp Myth uniforms and eating a variety of different meals. Several buffet tables were arranged with delicacies from every mythic culture. Bowls piled high with fat squirming grubs. Plates filled with carefully stacked nuggets of ore. Trays of flower bulbs, containers brimming with thick bubbling goop. I didn't even want to know what half the stuff was supposed to be. Loam must not have been waiting very long at the statuary for new orders, because he was towering over a line of barbecues grilling, I still couldn't believe it, hot dogs and hamburgers. His eyes had reverted back to their focused orange hue, and he was wearing an apron that declared, "My cooking is legendary." I was just about to grab a plate when I caught a glimpse of a round-bellied Cyclops hobbling his way over to a nearby picnic table. "Archie, hey!" I jogged over to him and could barely contain my shock. "What the heck happened to you?" A large purple bruise circled his entire eye, and his bottom lip was puffy and crusted with dried blood.
"Hey, Felix,"
he said.
"Be honest, does it look bad?"
"You look like you've been hit by a rook," I replied. "Who did this to you?" He suddenly became very interested in his sneakers.
"A few of the guys in my clan decided to pay me back for jumping ship. Our kind heal really fast, though, so by tomorrow morning I'll be fine. It's no big deal."
I was stunned at what I was hearing. "It's totally a big deal. You're hurt." I handed him a fresh napkin for his lip. "We need to tell someone about this. Let's find Tessa or—" Archie shook his head.
"Not a good idea, Felix. That would only make things worse. A Cyclops has to accept the punishment he receives from his clan. It's tradition."
"Well, it's a stupid tradition," I said. "You didn't do anything wrong, and now you're telling me that it's okay for them to beat up on you? That's insane."
"I know it seems crazy to you, but that's just how it is."
He tapped his forehead thoughtfully, as though shaking loose a good counter-argument.
"It's like, okay, why did the Fae create the Cloaked Grove instead of living with the rest of the mythic community? Some races happen to think that's pretty insane."
I could feel my cheeks burn as he spoke. I couldn't believe he was actually defending what had happened to him. "It is insane, you're exactly right," I snapped. "But spending too much time outside of the grove and not focusing on magical Fae-junk's the reason I've been sent to camp in the first place. So please, tell me again how I don't understand what it's like to break with tradition."
"Whatever, Felix, it's just a Cyclops thing, okay?"
he said, deflating our argument.
"Let's just forget about it and get something to eat."
"Fine, whatever." We got our plates and stood in line, all the while making awkward small talk about the campground and some of the other campers. Anything to keep us from reigniting a conversation about our cultural traditions. The party was really starting to become crowded now, as more and more people finished getting acquainted with their new cabins. I spied Bronte standing beside a nearby picnic table, overlooking an arm wrestling competition between a centaur and the braid-tattooed cyclops known as Ropes. "So he's really your brother, huh?" I asked, gesturing at the match. A few seconds later, Ropes pounded the centaur's arm onto the table, and the crowd burst into cheers.
"He really is,"
Archie replied.
"Not much of a family resemblance, I know."
Brontes grabbed Ropes by the arm and raised it in triumph.
"Another victory for Steropes!"
he roared.
"That's my boy!"
Archie sighed deeply, and I couldn't help but feel terrible for snapping at him a minute earlier. "Well, maybe you just take after your mum," I offered.
"Yeah, maybe."
He looked at his father and brother for a moment, then turned back to me.
"Can I tell you a secret, Felix?"
I nodded. "Sure." He took a deep breath, like he was about to offer his deepest confession.
"I don't really fit in with the rest of my family."
Ropes was now on top of the picnic table, shouting and smearing ketchup on his face like war paint. "No kidding," I said. "Well, have you tried talking to any of them about it?" He shook his head.
"Cyclops aren't known for their listening skills. If my dad disagreed with someone strongly enough, he'd probably just kill them."
Before I could respond, Loam bowed in my direction and asked what we would like to eat. I hadn't even noticed that we'd made it to the front of the line. "It all looks so good," I said. "What do you recommend, the hot dogs or the hamburgers?" It was supposed to be a simple question, but he looked up from the grill and paused like he was calculating the best possible answer.
Both are acceptable choices,
He said finally.
as both contain some of the required nutrients necessary for a body to function. Statistically speaking, I have served a total of 93 hot dogs and 127 hamburgers so far. However, if your question refers to the taste of these foods, I am unable to provide you with a suitable response.
Oh, I said, I'll just take a burger,
An agreeable choice.
he replied. Archie decided to go with 4 of each, and we found an empty table along the outside row. A hamburger was everything I'd ever dreamed it would be, full of flavour and texture from the meat and toppings. Archie mentioned that all food tastes better when you're camping, but you don't need to be a master chef to cook up something better than my usual dinner of boiled pine cones with sap butter. We were halfway through our meal when the sun dropped below the horizon as quickly as someone turning down a dial. In a flash, a full moon rose to take its place, and the afternoon sky dissolved into a blanket of twinkling stars. Hundreds of smoky, glowing orbs rose up from the ground and out of the trees, filling the entire area with a pale light. Everybody kept saying, "Ooh," as more and more of them gathered, hovering softly in the air.
Enjoying the mood lighting?
Came a cheerful voice from behind me. I spun around to see Lil smiling brightly. She was wearing a new flower petal dress, red and pink this time, like roses. "It's beautiful," I said. Then quickly added, the smoke thingies, they're beautiful." Judging by how fast my heart was beating, I was even more thankful that the visibility had just dropped.
What are they?
Archie asked between bites of his third hot dog. I secretly hoped that Lil was going to comment on his black eye, but unfortunately, the fresh coat of darkness across the camp made it hard to notice.
These little guys are will-o'-the-wisps.
She answered, shooing away one that had drifted near her face.
Spirits of the night. When we switch off the sun, they come right out of the woodwork. Don't worry, they're completely harmless.
Oh well, they seem... I was at a total loss for words, which made it even more embarrassing when another familiar voice said,
How's that for irony? Earlier a cat grabbed his hand, and now one has his tongue.
Stepping out from behind Lil, hands in the pockets of her new brown shorts, was Moxie. "Hey, you're still here," I said, snapping out of my stupor. "What happened?"
Come on. Did you really think they'd turn away someone as awesome as me?
She said, brushing imaginary dirt from her shoulder.
They practically begged me to stay.
Lil laughed.
Well, that's one way of putting it. Miss Tessa has agreed to allow Moxie to remain here on a trial basis. If she shows an aptitude for camp activities, she'll be free to stay for the entire summer.
"What kinds of activities?" I said.
Why, earning merit badges, of course. There's no better way to prove your abilities.
Lil leaned in closer and winked.
Actually, that's why I was hoping to bump in y'all. I know it's not any of my business, but I think it would be a great idea for the three of you to work together and help each other out. You know what they say, many hands make many merit badges.
I don't think anyone actually says that.
Moxie said.
No offense, Lil, but I'm more of a lone wolf kind of girl. I'm sure I'll be able to do just fine on my own.
I'm sure you could.
Lil agreed.
But merit badges can only be earned in teams of at least 3 different mythic races. It's one of the ways we try to promote diversity here at camp. The way I see it, after what happened back there on the bus, the 3 of you were made to be partners.
Moxie fidgeted with the hem of her shirt for a moment, then took a deep breath and plopped down on the picnic table bench beside me.
Go Team Outcast. Well, what are we waiting for? How do we start?
Lil clapped her hands in delight.
Excellent! You'll find everything you need in your copy of the Mythic Youth Training Handbook,
She said as a group of will-o'-the-wisps began to converge upon the stage beneath the Peridexian tree.
But that's going to have to wait right now. It's time for the opening ceremony.
This week's Camper Spotlight is Ox, the warm-hearted warrior. Felix says, Ox is without a doubt the toughest minotaur wearing a can't-miss sash. But he also has a baby snow owl, Olot, that never leaves his side. Yesterday, an ogre thought that it would make a good idea to steal the bird for an afternoon snack. About 3 seconds later, Ox made sure that the ogre's next meal would have to fit through a straw. I guess minotaurs can have a soft side after all. Ox was invented by Roger Sellers. You can find the picture of him on the Camp Myth webpage. Campers, Cast of Wonders could use your help. We love bringing you these stories every week, but we can't do it without you. Please consider donating at castofwonders.org, where you'll find buttons for regular and one-time donations via PayPal. Or help spread the word about our Camp Myth project and our weekly stories by blogging or tweeting about us. Write us a review on iTunes or like our Facebook page. There's lots of ways you can show your love for our Tales of the Fantastic. Camp Myth Phoenix Watching is a Cast of Wonders production brought to you by Wolfsbane Publishing and featuring the voice talents of Kate Baker, Adam Black, Tina Connolly, Graham Dunlop, Christiniana Ellis, Marguerite Kenner, Alethea Contis, Alistair Stewart, Ian Stewart, and Barry J. Northern. You can learn more about the world of Camp Myth at our website, castofwonders.org. Our weekly episodes are released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license. Share it, but no changes or selling it, please. Our Camp Myth theme music, August, is by Alexi Nov from musicalley.com. Thanks for listening.